Welcome back to the Pre-Vetted podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, we're joined by Dr. Alex Roher. He's a board-certified anesthesiologist and the owner of SDBotox. In 2012, he opened SDBotox to help people feel more confident through minimally invasive cosmetic procedures and microtreatments with a focus on natural-looking results and a warm and relaxing experience. Dr. Rohers talks about rejuvenation, mindset of proactive, preventive care, plus a commitment to personalized treatment plans and clear, reliable education in an industry that can be full of noise and misinformation. Alex, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm honored to have you here today.
Well,
So, tell us, why did you decided to start your clinics back in 2012?
Yeah, so I was kind of, as you mentioned, I was a board certified anesthesiologist, still am. Haven't performed anesthesia in like 5+ years at this point. So all I do now is this. And I will tell you, honestly, it wasn't a love for aesthetics initially. It was really just a falling out of love with anesthesia. It's just redundant. The hours you worked, like never knowing what time you get to go home, working nights, weekends, etc. Like you would ask the surgeon how much longer in the case, and they would tell you a number, and you have to take that number and multiply it by like 2. That's really like how much longer. Surgeons just aren't, there's a lot of ego. They're not the most fun to deal with. So, and that's not all of them, that's some of them, but enough that I just wasn't happy. So I called the company SDBotox because SD is San Diego. That's where I'm based. And Botox is the only procedure I knew at the time, meaning, I didn't know how to do filler, laser, or any other stuff just yet. So I just called SDBotox, and it worked out. It was like Botox is kind of a surrogate term for like all the procedures in this world. It's more of the household name. Yeah. And so no one came in for a couple of years, like a couple of months, and then slowly started getting busier. Had to learn business along the way because, like most doctors, I just did not have a business background. It's a different kind of brain, I think, like the medical side versus the business side. And so it's opened one clinic not too far from where I lived, and slowly got busier. I just rented a room from a esthetician, and then I got busier, and then yeah, and then another business doing similar stuff, similar procedures. They were going out of business, so they Hail Mary, they kind of sold me their assets, and that was my second location. And that one was when it really exploded. And then because it came to the staff, they were doing a lot of things right. They were doing some things wrong, so I cleaned it up. And that became my Pacific Beach office. This was probably like 2017, 2018. And I paid very little for that because it was just kind of in shambles. And then it just exploded. And then, you know, kind of kept growing organically, got to 5, kind of in the early, during COVID. Certain businesses did well during COVID, certain obviously did not, and so this business did great, like aesthetics, just because everyone had money, the government was giving them money, no one was traveling, everyone was starting to work remote. So it's called the Zoom boom, just like we're right now. We're talking, everyone's like looking at themselves and this little line they're not loving, they're going to go address. So it was just a great time. And it was like everyone was panicking, like as if this business wasn't going to do well. So I was swallowing up practices. I think I got to 5 at that point, 3 that year. And then more recently, we've kind of just been super dialed in operationally and just opportunistic. And so we've tacked on another 3. So we're at 8 in San Diego. And then I had a employee. She was one of my cool sculptors. Cool sculpting is a procedure that freezes and kills fat. So if you have like a double chin or a love handle, we could target just that specific area. That part of the business got eaten up a little bit by all the GLP ones. So like those Ozempic but she ended up moving to Austin because my employee moved to Austin because her boyfriend, now husband, got a job there. And we ended up opening an office together there. And that did so well that we then opened up 2 more in Austin. So I have a total of 11 SDBotoxes. And SDBotox is just purely aesthetics. So it's only, it's like Botox. There's 4 pillars of what we do. There's injectables, so Botox and filler. There's a laser and energy-based device, which is super important, resurfacing the skin, IPL, all that kind of stuff. And then there's at-home medical grade skincare. And then there's esthetician services like hydrofacial peels, that kind of stuff. So, so that's SD Botox. There's currently 11 of those. And then me and my best friend, we got more into the wellness side of it all. So we have two offices. It's called Hormones and Wellness by SD Botox. And that is not, that's like, so it's, we deal with a lot of like hormone replacement, men and women. Men are just testosterone. Women are, they'll do like, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And then we're super into the peptides, which are just having a moment right now. And that's all done out of that office as well. And then we do recovery modalities. So we do like DEXA scans, lab work, and then we do like saunas, cold plunges, cryotherapy. I'm sorry. Yeah, red light bed, hyperbaric oxygen, all the health and wellness side of this business. So it's like they're sister companies. This is more aesthetics and this is more wellness.
Right, right. And on wellness, you can do more preventive care so people can have the options of whether they want to have a aesthetic operation or they want to prevent it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that side, it's the younger generation is prioritizing health above like all the material possessions and things that like the older generation spends money on. And so, they're drinking less. They're all wearing like a Aura or a Whoop or a Apple Watch. So, they see the effects of like say drinking on their body. They get that instant feedback and they love all the health and wellness side. There's a lot of them that are, they don't like Botox somehow at some point became cool. It's the best thing. I mean, I'm not complaining, but it's like sometimes they come in at like 22 years old and they don't even have a line on their face and they're like, they want Botox. So the right thing is to do is not to do it. And that's what we do. But it is a changing cultural shift kind of towards the wellness and the aesthetic and taking care of yourself and being willing to spend a bigger portion of your money on this type of on bettering yourself, your skin, your health, etc. Kind of not waiting until you get sick. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think it's important because now you can provide both options, right? And coming from a world where, you don't hear anything about this type of operations until you hear, a bad case like I remember Meg Ryan, she had a beautiful face and then she got a really bad operation, right? And everybody was kind of talking about that, right, at that time. But nobody talks about the successful cases of plastic operations where you cannot see it, right?
Exactly. The goal is that you get something done and you look good, but no one knows that you had anything done. And you don't want it obvious. And in Meg Ryan's case, like a lot of the celebrities that have, I think it's just a matter of way too much filler. So filler, hyaluronic acid, you injected, you can make lips bigger, cheeks, anywhere on jaws, chins, etc. And sometimes celebrities and non-celebrities will just go overboard with the filler and start looking kind of alienish and kind of gives a whole like their faces are a billboard. So we don't, we tell people no all the time because a little bit of filler is great, but a lot of filler, you're going to look weird. And so it's a little bit of what's called filler fatigue. A lot of people are putting less hyaluronic acid filler in the face. They're doing more Sculptra and other products, but we're not making the weird looking people. I like to think we never did at SD Botox, but as a society and as an industry, I think we're backing off of like overfilled cat lady looks.
Right, right. Yeah. And I've seen more on the women this idea of owning their age, right? Rather than just trying to, present themselves as young even though they're not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about looking younger necessarily. It's just about looking your best. But there is a little bit when you put certain procedures, the quality of the skin, placement of the filler, et cetera, that you do achieve a little bit of a more youthful appearance, but it's not really the North Star primary goal. It's really just making you feel beautiful in your skin.
Right. And what are the biggest reasons people come to see you?
Um, so I would say Botox is still 65% of what we do. And I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with Botox, but Botox, It's a class of drugs called a neuromodulator. You inject into certain muscles that gets rid of, let's say, like you have those horizontal lines on your forehead from raising your eyebrows, or that vertical line between your eyebrows from furrowing your brow, or your crow's feet from all that smiling, all that happiness. So we inject the Botox into that area, and it decreases the function of that muscle for 4 months, and those lines fade. Botox is number one, filler is number two, and then we have a lot of laser and energy based devices. So I kind of talked about cool sculpting. That's kind of, like I said, on its way out a little bit because, all the new GLP-1 drugs are just so amazing that everyone's losing weight like that. But we do a lot of like laser resurfacing, what's called IPL or BBL, broadband light. So it's just removes the pigment. When you have that like hyperpigmentation, the sun damage on your face or anything red, vascular, it's awesome for that. It's just kind of like that's like the beauty side of this industry. Just really, like dialing in your physical so that you look amazing. And then the other side is so you once you look amazing, or then you feel amazing once we get you on the right hormones or peptides or whatever it may be, all the healthy lifestyle changes.
Yeah, because it's not only looking good, it's also feeling good, right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes the external appearances reinforces the internal feeling, right?
Yeah, humans are very visual creatures, and what do they say, that you judge someone within the first 2 seconds of meeting them? And obviously physical appearance is a big fact part of that.
Right, right. And what does a good result look to you?
Kind of like I said earlier, it's like you look great and no one knows what you did. Why do you look great? Is it a laser? Is it a Botox? Is it some well placed filler? Whatever it may be, it's subtle enough that no one knows what happened, but obvious enough where you look great, but not going to get called out on by all your family and friends and everyone else.
Right, right. I'm sure that those patients, they won't feel comfortable referring, other patients to you because they don't want to expose themselves as
Yeah.
having,
It's a
right,
little bit, yeah, it's true. We do have a referral program and it's not used too often. It is used, and there's like two type of people, they're the gatekeepers that just secretly do all this stuff and don't tell anyone. And then there's the sing it from a mountaintop, like, oh, I went to SDBotox. Look what I did. Going live on TikTok during the procedure itself, all the things. So obviously that's my preference, those people, but I understand it's a personal thing and it's a medical procedure and it's their right, just like anything, their patient privacy. If they don't want to say anything to anyone about it, that's perfectly fine too.
right, right. Yeah, but I can understand the not frustration, but the situation where they won't feel if you do a great job, they won't feel comfortable telling,
Right.
you know, right,
Yeah. No, I just slept well. Oh, okay. Yeah, I totally. Yeah,
right.
good sleep really
Of
does that.
course,
Sometimes it'll be like a group of friends, and let's say 5 friends, and one of them realizes one day that the other four have been getting all these things done for like 4 years, 5 years, and like they're like, "What? Not cool, guys."
right, right. They can refer from a friend. I have a friend,
Right.
that got an
Yeah, exactly.
operation,
I
now
hear
looks
this stuff is
great.
amazing.
Right, right. Not that I have done that, but
Yeah, yeah,
that way
exactly.
they can keep face to their friends and you know,
And I think a lot of that social stigma is getting better. I think it used to be more secretive. And I think now the general trend, I would say, is like more just telling people what you did and where you did it and how much it costs and how much you love it and etc.
right, right. There's less stigmas for sure. Yeah, and it's hard because people, once the stigma goes out, then they can freely talk about it, and it creates a reinforcing feedback loop where people can realize that the outcome is not going to be the Meg Ryans of the world.
Exactly. Well, the problem is that the Meg Ryans of the world, like we notice them. So even though that's like makes up like 1% of what total patients said, people that dabble in this world, that 1%, like when other people see that they just assume that's what this world is. Cause the other ones you don't notice, like, you notice the one woman with giant lips that should have quit putting filler in there like 5 syringes ago, but you don't notice let's say the other 49 out of 50 that, did it one time and it looks great. You think, oh, look at this natural beauty.
Right. Right. And San Diego and all the area around LA, it's kind of the you have the highest percentage of women that have been through
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
plastic
yeah.
surgery,
Southern
right?
California is probably the mecca for, like San Diego, Orange
Right.
County, LA. Definitely like we have that reputation for a reason, like definitely there's more med spas than Starbucks.
Right, right. And do you see a difference in expectations compared to San Diego and Austin in terms of what they expect from the surgeries?
I'd say I feel like San Diego does have, I'd like to think that when people think of San Diego, they just think of like kind of like sun kissed beach beauties, kind of not overdone. I think like the one that has that big stigma is LA, the one where that tends to be where if you're going to have too much of anything, it's probably LA is somehow involved. Not to say that doesn't happen everywhere, but definitely that does seem to be where patients take it to the extreme and providers don't tell them no when they probably should.
Right, right. Yeah. I like San Diego because it's it's a much more balanced place compared to LA, for sure.
Me too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did my residency in LA. The reason I lived in San Diego for 14 years now. It's definitely
Right,
I
right.
like visiting LA. I'm not here bashing LA. LA is a great place in its own way, but I mean, I agree with you. This is a better fit, and I think even a lot of LA people might even say that. But LA is great in its own way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the I I like LA to go and visit, um, but I've seen I've seen so many extremes, right? That I I go there with a lot more caution, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what do you enjoy most about this work?
I like the instant gratification of my favorite procedure at SDBotox, the aesthetic side, is called a liquid rhinoplasty. And so on the nose, this is called the dorsal hump. This is called the radix, this little depression. And then oftentimes people have ptosis or drooping of the tip, or the surgeon took way too much when he did a surgical rhinoplasty. Then I like filling the nose with a product called Juverin Voluma and Juverin Velux. And that instant gratification, just you see the results right away. We give the patient this cool like three-way mirror, kind of like when you're getting a suit tailored. So you can see all the different angles. And so they could see complete profile from both sides. And I mean, there's tears sometimes. They're just like, it's just so fun to change someone's life so dramatically in literally like 10 minutes. We use ultrasound, make sure we don't have any vessels, and then we do the procedure, give them the mirror, and it's just a fun patient interaction from beginning to end. I started seeing patients over at Hormones and Wellness by SD Botox, just 2 hours a week. And I enjoy that patient interaction too. I'm getting into that. Like, I've been doing this so long that it's like, I'm enjoying the newness of that. People come in, we talk about perimenopause. Sometimes patients will come to me for Botox, and it's like 45-year-old woman. I start asking her about sleep, energy, mood, sex drive, etc. And it's like my line is, it's like the Botox is like polishing the brass on the Titanic. The ship's going down. Like, let's get you over to my other clinic. Let's do some labs. Let's get a DEXA scan. And based on symptoms and labs and everything else, we could then get them started on hormone replacement, and then even take them even further with some peptides. Then that patient comes back to me 4 months later for more Botox, and you could just see the difference. Like my Botox patients typically don't hug me, but when someone's going through menopause and you turn that around, oh my God, they'll hugs and, singing my name from the mountaintop for sure.
Right, right. That's amazing. And now you have more control over your hours, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think if someone asked me like not too long ago, is there anything you miss about anesthesia? And I had to think a long time. I mean, I do enjoy some of those procedures, like putting in a central line or like a peripheral nerve block under ultrasound guidance, but not really. I mean, I haven't thought about anesthesia. Like, if you're going to surgery and I'm your anesthesiologist, don't get the surgery because it's been 5 years. Like, you don't want me putting you to sleep. And I don't miss it. Like, honestly, like 99% lifestyle is better, work itself is better, financially, everything is, my life is just better now. I'm happy I went through a little bit of a period where I was less happy. I would say, I wouldn't say depressed, but I just, anesthesia is an interesting gig. It's good. It's great. I'm not bashing this one either, but it's kind of, you go to work every day, no one dies, you do a good job, you go home, repeat the next day, it's just like, there's no long-term goals to it all. And it's cool owning a business and seeing it grow and the decisions you make like come to fruition and kind of like chipping away, grow, making it more successful. I once read a book that everyone thinks about like their business and they always like think about like the three major things that changed the business, like three big decisions, like getting that Pacific Beach office, that second location, whatever. But really it's those like 1% incremental gains every week that add up. And that's really where the magic is. And that's really like, so I like two brains. It's kind of like the medical side, which I love, and then the business side. And sometimes I'm very into this, and sometimes I'm very into that. And I've got an awesome team now. We have, I think, like almost 100 employees, not quite, maybe like 80 ish. And just the relationships and the like, you're just developing the like that side of the business, like like the market, like developing the people themselves that then empower the business.
Right, right. It seems that you enjoyed the technical difficulty of anesthesiology, but then you didn't enjoy the coworkers, the hours,
Mhm.
the lack of control over that, right?
Yeah,
But
and I would even argue maybe just the work itself got old. It's very redundant. And also like, surgeries are 5 hours. So it's like the surgeon's having all the fun. The anesthesiologist is in there writing down vitals and I don't know. To be honest, like I actually wanted to be a surgeon. I wrote after medical school, I wrote my personal statement, was applying to surgical residencies, and I had this epiphany that the lifestyle was, I just did not want it. And I mean, it's so fun to operate, but that's such a small percent of what they really even do. So I scrambled. I rewrote the last paragraph of my personal statement, applied to all the same programs, but for the anesthesia department instead of the surgery department. And then about halfway through residency, I was like, I think I kind of like, what have I done? Like not like I wanted to be a surgeon, not like, but I almost didn't want to be an anesthesiologist. And then a beautiful thing about life and medicine in particular is just you could pivot, and that's what I did. I left one field for another. And I don't think people are supposed to have the same job for 40 years. I mean, that's okay if that's your thing, but I'd love like the journey of like, we're being open to new opportunities. And I've had failures along the way. Obviously, I've had businesses close down, et cetera. But what kind of that journey and like just kind of like, that generation of like after World War II, where you just go to the factory for 40 hours a week and, whatever that looks like. And for 40 years, it's just like, just kind of put your head down and work until you can retire. Like, no, I think it's like the joy is found along the way.
right, right, yeah. The eventually you lost the purpose, right? Because you were repeating and repeating, and you didn't have any gratification for the work because it's either no gratification, immediate gratification, neither long term gratification, right? Because you don't see the patients further on the road getting better and getting a feeling of accomplishment, right? And with every high performing activity, you eventually end up making sacrifices on the personal side, right?
Yeah.
How many surgeons can have a balanced work life, right?
Yeah,
It's hard,
absolutely.
right? The
Yeah,
best
someone
ones are
told
going
me,
to work harder and harder on the job, right?
right, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, like you were saying, like humans need three things: like a purpose, something to look forward to, and someone or something to love. You know, there's another analogy someone had where it was like life is like these like a gas stove, like four burners, and like the four burners are like work, career, friends, family, and maybe fun. Yeah, let's go with that. And it's just like it's hard to have all four burning at the same time. It's easy to have like two, focus on like the career and the friends or whatever, and then but it's hard to like really have all four of those going all the time. So something like I tucked away and I think about every once in a while, something like, am I doing enough of this? Am I doing too much of that kind of thing?
Right. Right. Yeah. And now you can have a much balanced life. You can have you can see the impact on the people, not only on your patients but also on your employees, right? Because now you're responsible for their lives and seeing them grow. That also provides a lot of gratification and happiness, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is a little bit of a family. And then that makes it super difficult when you have to let someone go. Cause it's like,
Yes.
as a company matures, it was kind of like, it was small and fun and I could hang out with all my employees on go party, whatever it looks like. And now it's at a point where it's like a little more corporate. It's not a good look when I have like 10 drinks with the staff, like we had to mature as a company. And so I wouldn't say we're like corporate and boring, but I would say we're just more mature and, cautious and probably better as a result of that all. So
Right.
it's like my baby, it's like I joke, I have a 6 and an 8-year-old daughters and I consider SDBotox my 13-year-old daughter, it's like, or maybe 14 now actually. Yeah, but like, um, it's going through some 13, 14-year-old is a difficult time in someone's life. It's got some challenges, puberty. So it definitely feels like that some days. So like this thing's going through puberty. It's maturing, but it's also a lot of mood swings, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, all the things.
Right. Right. And then based on my experience, the next iteration of that is to be able to let the baby go, right? So can the company operate without you for a day, a week, a month, right?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So when you start a business, you're doing everything. You're wearing every hat. You're juggling all the balls.
Yes.
And then as a company matures and you have experts in those particular fields or part of the business, like finance, operations, marketing, and medical, then equals goals. But I've just had people, I surrounded myself with people that are so good at what they do that I didn't have much to do. So it's like, what am I, the CEO? Because like my COO is probably so strong that she could stand alone as a CEO. So I kind of went very lifestyle for a while and that I was traveling, like maybe like 16 to 20 weeks a year. Like I'm a big skier, so winters are fun. I'm like wakeboarding. I like golf. I went the pendulum swung a little too much lifestyle and the business didn't suffer too much, but I think it is better when I'm around more. So that was about the ski season. I've only gone done 2 trips. So you could tell like maybe a total of 10 days. So it's definitely, and I like coming back. I like the phase that I'm in right now, but I also there's a lot of value in those trips with the family, with friends, whatever, and like kind of take yourself out of the business, find inspiration from different places, think about a problem from a different angle. I think there's a lot of to gain for the business itself, as well as your own like mental, like happiness. Yeah. So I'm at a point now where I'm focusing on the things I like. I'm like the marketing side of things, spearheading some projects there, and I'm bringing on new medical procedures. We just got everyone's losing all this weight on all of the GLP-1s. A lot of people have loose skin, so as we're addressing that problem, we're putting filler, revolumizing the face it's called Ozempic face. There's also Ozempic finger. You're having to get your wedding ring resized because it's fallen off because you lost 50 pounds. It's called Ozempic butt because people usually want some weight on their butts. And so we're doing some cool new procedures just for the laxity of the skin. It's Morpheus and Quantum, and they're tightening the abdomen and like even postpartum women. So women that have given birth, they're thin, but they have loose skin. So we're getting very into those particular skin tightening procedures right now. So
Right.
it's yeah, yeah, yeah.
By detaching yourself from the operation, then you can focus on the innovation that no other employee will be able to do if they're doing their jobs, right? So, but I think it's interesting to have that duality of, in the back of your mind that the company can run without you. And then you decide to get involved in the most challenging problems, the most innovative problems, because that gives you the freedom that whatever you do, in those activities, even if you fail completely on trying to achieve a goal, you learn a lot, but it will not affect the reality of the company, right? You can take those additional risks, right?
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
becomes much more gratifying for you, right?
Yeah. And I think someone said that success is just being able to fail well. And that really it is. You just have to, I think it's fear of failure that prevents a lot of people from doing anything at all. And it's just take that leap. If you're going to wait for everything to be perfect, you're never going to do anything. So it's like you have, I try to teach this to my 6 and 8-year-old daughters because, one beats the other one in like Mario Kart or something, that you learn more from your failures than from your successes. But it's a little bit of a little bit of a complicated, like, they're not really grasping it just yet, but I'll continue to hammer them and tell them that, failure is part of life and it's a blessing and all this kind of stuff. Maybe I should save that for when they're a little older, but I'm trying. I'm trying to get that in them now.
Right, right. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, the best way I explain to my son, I have a 10-year-old, the best way I explain this is the heroes, they have courage because they're afraid. If they're not afraid, like, at one point Superman was so, you know, perfect as a hero that didn't have any weakness. They had to come up with kryptonite to kind of, make him vulnerable, right? So without fear, there is no, courageousness, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I think that's the definition of being brave is being scared and doing it anyway.
Right, right.
Yeah, no, I went on a surf trip with Laird Hamilton. He's like a big wave surfer. He was like kind of like a hero of mine. I had his poster on my wall when I was a kid, and this opportunity came up. And Laird was telling us a story about how he caught a wave and fell. And this guy was like, "Oh, I didn't know Laird Hamilton fell," And Laird is like, "I've fallen more than you've surfed," kind of thing. Like, meaning I've took a lot of failure for me to become this who I am, this like, surf god. So it was just kind of a cool application, kind of exactly what we're talking about, but just kind of more in the sports world, which I thought, is like makes it even cooler than, I'd rather talk about, way cooler than Botox. Let's big wave surfing.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's embracing failure and being able to just move forward with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to remind yourself though, because when you're in the midst of failing, you forget. So it's like,
Yes.
remember that failure is good.
Yes, yes. Which brings me to the other topic, having a family that supports you. Because the way that I see it, my wife is my co-founder, so we work together a lot. But the way that I see it is, no matter what happens in the world, no matter how successful we are, how unsuccessful we are, we have each other, we have our family, and that's my rock, and that means that everything else, kind of is less important, right?
Yeah, I agree. It goes back to the burners, and it's like if work is going bad, at least you have family. It's like if family's going bad, whatever, at least you have work. It's like friends, fun, but it's tough when it's like everything's bad, which happens every once in a while. Your home life is hurting for whatever reason, your work life is hurting. And it's like 1 + 1 is like 6. It's like, where do I turn? That's so.
Right. Right. Which leads you to make bigger risks, to make more innovation, to take more chances. And it's a positive feedback loop that kind of fits to each other, right? Because
Yeah.
now you have more resources. You can spoil a little bit more your family, take them to a nice place to dinner, to vacations, whatever. And that, it kind of, each other kind of help each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And me and my wife have been together for, I want to say like 20 years at this point. We met my third year of medical school. So I was like, yeah, I'm 43 now. So I was 23 or 24 then. So like 20 years we've been together. And it's like, you know, love you, baby. Hopefully you're listening to this. It's been it's fun to go through life with someone like her.
Right. Right. The way that I see it is like adding salt to the food, right? It enhances the flavors, right? Then when you're successful, it makes that success feel better because you have, your life partners with you and your family with you that is supporting you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, going back to the practice, what are the most common questions first time patients ask?
I guess kind of like we were talking about, everyone kind of lumps these like overfilled, weird looking people into this field. So it's kind of getting them over that fear. There's the fear of pain. I mean, it is a needle, so it does hurt a little as it goes through the skin, but it's not terrible. I think it's like fear of like a complication too. Botox, the biggest complication is you can get Botox in a muscle right up in your eyelid, and then you have like ptosis or like a drooping of your eye like this, and that it lasts like 3 months. It sucks. It's not pleasant. There are eye drops that help, but filler is scarier. Filler, you could get what's called an intravascular occlusion. So that means filler is a thick viscous substance like a gel. And if you inject it into an artery, you could block that artery. And then whatever that artery is feeding blood to is no longer getting blood. So you can necrose, you could, like kill someone's, skin, which is never pleasant. And there's ways out of that too. So filler, hyaluronic acid, there's an enzyme called hyaluronidase. So you inject that, hopefully under ultrasound guidance, but even just blindly, and you could reverse that. Lasers could be a little scary because if you don't do the right settings, you could burn people. Also, if they're on certain medications, certain antibiotics, Accutane, definitely we don't touch Accutane patients with lasers. Peels could get out of hand. Like you could have so there's legit. It is a medical practice. There are things that go wrong, and having done this 14 years, I mean, I've seen all of that. That's almost what you want. You want the guy or the provider to see that's kind of had some crazy stuff happen and has gotten out of it and has learned, like we said, like a failure that you learned. Like I had a bad occlusion. That's that, where I was injecting someone's nose. I got into an artery. The nose started dying. I was traveling at the time, which is crazy. And, I was just like doing a guest thing somewhere, like not in SDBotox in another clinic. And I mean, as a result of that, I learned ultrasound. I learned how it applies to this. I bought an ultrasound. I bettered my practice. I came out stronger as a result of it. The downside is of obviously that patient, went through some misery, and so did I. But I mean, she's fine now and mostly forgiven me. So and the practice is better as a result. So I mean, if you want to make an omelet, you got to crack some eggs. Not calling her an egg or anything. I'm just saying, if you want to do anything great in life in general, it's like like rewarding things are tough, and so you have to self forgive and you have to make it right in some way when something does happen, and you have to fix it, and you have to learn and you have to then try to prevent it from happening again. Like I was like, I'm also interested in kind of medicine overall. Like one nice analogy I like is that when a plane crashes, the FAA like gets that black box and they study it and they find like, how do we prevent this from ever happening again? There's systematic changes that, or like something happens that, new procedure, whatever, that they prevent future plane crashes. Whereas in medicine, it's almost like the plane is crashing and our goal is to prolong the crash. Like instead of like falling to your death in 8 minutes, you're going to fall to your death in 12 minutes. It's like we're just like, you have diabetes and now we're going to put you on all these medications. It's like your quality of life won't be like, why didn't we put that same patient on medication before they cross some invisible line that we decided is the definition of diabetes? Why didn't we? So that's really the big shift in medicine now that I think is happening largely with the younger people, is they're more preventative and they're really prioritizing their health and going to places like Hormones and Wellness by SDBotox and like, and it's the simple stuff too. It's literally like, the things that everyone talks about, like exercise, daily movement, whatever it may be, like you can geek out on different zones and, like heart rate, all that kind of stuff, but just moving, eating right, not drinking too much, prioritizing sleep, and then there's things like just going outside, getting early morning sun, like being in nature, feeling connected socially to other people. I mean, these things are all basically free, and it's just a matter of doing them so that you don't turn your plane crash from 8 minutes to 12. You're preventing those diabetes, metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease, dementia, like all the big cancer, all the things that kill people. So it's really, it's a beautiful thing to watch as a doctor, kind of like almost like society's maturation and prioritizing health and not having a car full of garages, but having like, a resting heart rate of 50. It's a real flex.
Right. the way that the FAA has been able to make flights safer and safer, right? And it's safer than driving a car, right? And how many flights have they been able to do, right? Compared to how many people have died or had got into accidents, right?
Right.
And that systemic improvement hasn't happened in health, right? There's actually a general from I don't know if it's the Army or the Navy, but basically talking about that, throughout the years, less and less people are qualified just to apply to the military, right? Because they don't have the basic, they cannot do the basic training because they have the minimum, right? They're overweight, they are, they don't exercise, right? And they cannot pass the minimum, right? So, and that's the critique that I have for the healthcare insurance. It's, you broke the car, well, we figure out how much it costs to fix it, right? But there's no incentive for prevention, right? In that
Exactly.
system.
Oh,
Right.
and I think health insurance is not fond of, and no one's fond of. Like honestly, like as terrible as it sounds, it's like a CEO was like murdered down of United Healthcare, and the general sentiment was
Yes.
like, "Well, sorry that happened, but you guys are pretty evil." Like it wasn't. It was funny to see society's reaction to that. It was like because that is the general sentiment about health insurance. They are incentivized to deny claims. They're not looking out for your health. They're looking out for their bottom line, their shareholders, whatever. And it's a broken system, and everyone knows it, and no one has the solution to it, or someone probably does, but no one's implemented it. But it's fascinating. I bought a book. I haven't read it yet, but it's basically like it's about, I don't know, like 20 different countries and their healthcare system, like Canada with its like free healthcare for all, but you can't pay to cut the line. And the United Healthcare era, I'm sorry, United Kingdom, like it just kind of goes through. I think, I think the general conclusion was like Australia or New Zealand has an awesome healthcare system, but like I said, I haven't read the book yet. So I don't know I don't know how it ends.
Right, right. In Argentina, I grew up in Argentina, moved to Mexico 17 years ago, and one of the things that they have is called prepaid medical care. So basically, you pay a fee every month, and then you get access to everything except aesthetics or anything that is non-critical, right? Or so, if you have you need to get a tooth removed, right? Unless it's critical, they won't do it, right? For the first, I don't know, 6 months or whatever, right? So you have a cooling period. But if you have an emergency, they're going to take care of you as if you were, patient for 20 years. And the money is spent distributed throughout caring everybody. So it's a different thing, and they are incentivized to keep you healthy as for longer. So they do yearly checkouts. They do 6 month checkout on different things, right? Because they want to keep
Yeah.
you healthy because it's in their best interest, right? And then you have a copay from employees. So an employer would pay some of that money, so you pay a little bit and then you get copay for medicine. You don't have the crazy prices as I've seen happening in the US. They don't have the crazy prices for medicine. So it becomes very cheap. It becomes very cheap to pay and very cheap to buy medicine whenever you need it, right? And
Way to
then
go,
that,
Argentina.
yes, yes. It works really great, right? In Mexico, they have the healthcare insurance, so it's a bit different, right? Yeah. But
Yeah.
they have a public healthcare system where basically you get treatment for free, but for complex operations is great because they have the best doctors. But then for everything else that is non complex, um, the system sucks because you have a lot of queues, it's hard to get allocated time, whatever. And that's where you can, if you have both, then you can choose, right? You can have a private
Yeah.
for one thing, but then they cap you off to a certain amount. And then if it goes up, you can switch to the public, which is covered by your employer's fee, right? And that's better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. We like what you say, like we don't prioritize preventative care in the United States. And I think a lot of that is because like the doctor experience is so miserable. Like it takes a long time to be seen, like to get an appointment 2 months, and then, like doctor's not going to be on time. He's overwhelmed. He's got seen too many patients. System's kind of, stacked against him. When it's finally your turn, it's like rushed, it's like 2 minute thing. Here you go, whatever. It's like, and then having to go, so it's interesting because we are a med spa. We do primarily aesthetics. The only one procedure or one I don't know what you would call it, one service that we do at both SDBotox and Hormones and Wellness by SDBotox is the GLP-1s, so like Ozempic, Mounjaro, etc. And we we make patients get labs in order to start that procedure or that those medications. And you would be shocked by how many times we've picked up on, thyroid disease or kidney or liver, like pancreas, whatever. And it's just because it's like these people are not getting regular healthcare. This is the first time anyone's looking at this. So it's like I don't really care if you come to me because you're overweight and you want to change your physical appearance to feel better about yourself. Have you do that. I don't care. Or if you're coming to me because you're afraid of metabolic disease, you're kind of going down that diabetes pathway. That's great. Because the truth is, once you're on these medications, you're going to get the benefit of both. You're going to look better, you're going to feel better, and you're going to stave off some serious diseases that like have long-term sequelae. Like I remember when I was going through my general surgery internship, there was a guy, it was a Mexican guy, so he called me El Cerrucho, which I correct if I'm wrong, that means like the butcher. Because diabetes, like late term diabetes, when you don't take care of it, you got blood sugars in the 400s on a regular basis. I mean, it's terrible for your microvasculature. So, like, I mean, we were cutting off toes and we were transmetatarsal half the foot, then like a low BKA below knee
Wow.
amputation. Then, I mean, we just kept like systematically like kept chopping this man down. And it's like, it's like one thing if you think, oh, I'm not gonna take care of my health because I'm just gonna die young, but it's like it's not that simple. It's like oftentimes you're dying a death of like just me cutting off like further and further up your leg. It's just like it's and that like, really. I mean, I remember when this class of drugs came out, like GLP-1s. It was a diabetic medication. Came out in like 2017. Then it was kind of like the Hollywood people figured it out. The Kardashians were on it, obviously less so for health and more for aesthetics. And they were saying like there was a shortage because like everyone was taking these medications to get thin and the diabetics couldn't get their own medication, which I understand. And we kind of did the compounding pharmacy, so we were trying not to touch the name brand that was for the diabetics. But I mean, don't you think that same diabetic would have preferred to be on that medication 10 years before so that they never got diabetes, and now they're not having to be on insulin and like 12 other diabetic medications, including GLPs. Wouldn't it be great if that just never happened? So it's like, I understand that the shortage was like, look at these poor diabetics, but like at the same time, like, look at all these people that aren't going to be diabetic. Look at all these, like they'll, that's amazing that like that's true medicine. It's just that the problem is the incentive is kind of prolonging that plane crash. I'm not saying I don't hate the pharmaceutical industry nearly as much as the insurance industry, but I will say, the incentive is for you to need to take a medication for a long time. So that's what they want. They want you. They actually want. They're incentivized for people to have a disease, and then for that person to be on their medication, like high blood pressure medication, for 30 years or whatever it may be. And there's like that's the system is not such that anyone is winning when you exercise, and no, like the pharmaceutical industry isn't winning when you don't get a disease. So it's like where there isn't enough public health push to really. I mean, there is some obviously, but there should be more of like truly preventative, like don't get sick care, not sick care, healthcare.
Right, right. And I think you nail it when you said when you were compelling the FAA that were doing systematic improvement, and in the healthcare system they're not, right? And that's a core issue, right? Because I think we all agree that having healthier people on the society is better for everybody. It's less medicine cost, people can have happier lives, can do more things, right? So you have that. And then on the other hand, all the healthcare system is not incentivizing you to stay healthy. It actually, kind of try to, just make patches to keep people, connected to dependent of drugs or medical procedures, because those are the incentives they have, right?
Yeah, no, and that's why I'm proud of my industry. I mean, I think you could look at what I do and think very superficial. You just kind of making lips bigger. No, I mean, like I said, we are this, especially with the new branch. We're really like I'm the only doctor people will see. Like it's a lot of people. Like they just don't go to the doctor, and so just that point of entry into the healthcare system of like, maybe it was some vanity thing that brought you in, but now guess what? You're on a GLP-1. Like I said, it's like you're losing weight, you're looking better, obviously, but like you're also like not going to get all the long-term, effects of being overweight and all the health, metabolic, et cetera. So it's a satisfying field to be in for a lot of reasons. Like I said, the big reveal with the nose, but it's also just these people that like really you're explaining to them the importance of health and what they can do and how to not get sick. And then pointing them, getting the labs, getting the DEXA scan, which is a full body. We just got the DEXA. I love the DEXA. It's like this, like you lay on this bed and it's X-ray technology. It goes over your entire body and it tells you your body fat percent, your lean body mass, your visceral fat, so the fat inside the abdominal cavity that's associated with metabolic disease, your bone density, and then it's like in business, and it applies here in medicine. It's like you don't change what you don't measure. So it's just great to have that data point. And then you go home and you whatever lifestyle change, you're eating better, exercising more, drinking whatever you do that, and then you do the repeat DEXA and lab work, and you could see your lean body mass increase. You could see your visceral fat decrease. You could see I actually have low bone density. I'm like a bird over here. I'm like the 25th percentile for my, I'm saying I learned right before a ski trip too. It's like nice to have in the back of your mind. Like, so I'm like, from 0 to 100, I'm like a 25% for my age and bone density. Oh, I'm starting to take vitamin D, I'm starting to, I was always exercising, but really prioritizing like strength because building muscle, hypertrophy, making the muscle bigger actually strengthens the bone because it's pulling, it's tensile, positive feedback. You're now laying down new bone. I, it's like, but was I ever diagnosed with like osteoporosis or something? No, I wasn't. I did it early enough and I not found a problem before it was a problem.
Right, right. And I think that there's always room for improvement. I think that's important that you can measure that, right? Because then you can work towards an improvement. And even though people come from vanity, I think that it's important that you are meeting them where they are. That's the initial motivation, but then you're providing a holistic approach. It's not only about how you look; it's also about how you look and your health and how you feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Alex, we're running out of time. I truly appreciated you being here today. I think we learned a lot. Any final remarks before we wrap it up?
No, appreciate it. I'm new to the podcast scene, so appreciate searching me out and putting me on here. Great to meet you, Federico.
Absolutely. You did great. So, thank you for being here today.
All right, thank you.